The great hall of the alien palace was silent. Hundreds of alien nobles stood in rows, dressed in rich armor, shining robes, and glowing jewels. At the center of it all, on a high silver throne, sat Queen Valara, the proud and powerful ruler of the giant Zalari race. She was 8 feet tall, with glowing silver eyes and long black hair tied in braids of gold. Her skin shimmered with a soft blue tone, and her voice could silence storms. She ruled dozens of planets and crushed rebellions with just a wave of her hand. She was known across the galaxy as the Unbreakable Queen. But today, something strange had entered her throne room, a human, a single, average-sized man in a brown uniform, with dust on his boots and a confident smile on his face. His name was Jace Kellen, a former soldier and now a human diplomat, sent to ask for peace between humans and Zalari. Everyone expected him to bow low, to beg for mercy, maybe even offer gold or land, but instead, he said something shocking. "I offer myself," Jace said, standing tall before the queen. "Let our species become allies through breeding. I offer you the first bond between human and Zalari." The room froze. And then came the laughter. Loud, cruel, echoing. The nobles burst out laughing, holding their stomachs, tears in their eyes. Some even fell to their knees. Queen Valara's lips curled into a smirk. She stood from her throne and walked down the silver steps, her steps slow, her long black cloak flowing behind her like smoke. She stopped in front of Jace and looked down at him. He barely reached her chest. Her eyes scanned him up and down like she was inspecting a broken toy. "You," she said, her voice like cold metal. "You dare offer your tiny, weak human body to me?" Jace didn't move. He didn't flinch. "Yes," he replied calmly, "because I think we are stronger together. And maybe you need something new." More laughter. This time from behind the throne. Even the queen's own guards couldn't help it. She leaned closer. "I have crushed warriors twice your size. My kind can rip through metal with our claws. We mate with strength, not softness. You would break in one night. And yet," Jace replied with a smile, "you're still alone." The room went dead silent. Valara blinked. For a moment, just a second, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, or maybe anger. She turned sharply, her cloak whipping through the air. "Take him away," she ordered. "Put him in the guest chambers. He'll be sent back tomorrow." But Jace wasn't done. "Afraid I might be right," he called out. The queen stopped. She didn't look back, but her fists clenched at her sides. The guards hesitated. The entire hall waited. Finally she said, "Let him stay. 1 week. If he proves he's more than just words, I'll give him a test." And then she left the hall without another word. That night, Jace sat on a balcony high above the alien city, looking at the twin moons in the sky. He sipped strange blue tea and listened to the distant hum of ships flying through the clouds. He knew what he said was crazy. Humans were small, weak compared to Zalari warriors. But Jace also knew something the aliens didn't. Human biology had secrets. And there was something in his blood, a mutation, an old gene passed down from Earth's most ancient tribes. It had saved him once in war. It made him faster, stronger. And it had left a strange mark on his chest that glowed when he was angry. His people thought it was a gift. Scientists called it evolution. But Jace didn't care what name they gave. He just knew it might be the one thing that could make a queen kneel. Meanwhile, in her private chamber, Queen Valara paced the floor angrily. Her royal advisors begged her to ignore the human, to send him away quickly, but something about him stayed in her mind. The way he didn't flinch, the way he smiled, the way he said those final words, "You're still alone." It was true. She had crushed armies, won wars, ruled systems, but she had no mate, no heir, no connection to anything that lasted. She shook her head and looked at her reflection in the mirror. "He's just a human," she whispered to herself, but deep down, Something was already changing inside her, and it began with a strange heat rising in her blood. The queen didn't sleep that night. Her chamber was quiet, the air thick with golden incense. The stars outside her window shimmered like fireflies. Yet her mind kept returning to the human, Jace, that short, stubborn male with calm eyes, who dared to challenge a queen with words. She hated it, but she also remembered his scent, his voice, the way he didn't tremble. She stood near the balcony and stared down at her kingdom. "If he wants to prove his worth," she whispered, "let's give him a death sentence and call it a test." The next morning, the palace gates opened wide. The alien court gathered in the great stone arena. Thousands of Zelari filled the seats, waiting for a show. Queen Valara stepped forward, her black cloak trailing behind her. She raised her arm and spoke loudly for all to hear. "Human Jace has spoken boldly, too boldly. He says he wishes to breed with me," she sneered. The crowd chuckled. "Then let him first survive." A great metal door creaked open at the far end of the arena, revealing a dark, misty forest beyond. Giant trees swayed. Strange howls echoed from within. "5 days," she said. "He must survive 5 days alone in the Vorlon jungle, without food, water, or weapons, if he lives. I'll hear his offer again." The crowd roared with laughter and cheers. No one had ever returned from the jungle, not even trained Zelari hunters. It was cursed, filled with beasts, poison, and shadows that moved on their own. Jace stood at the edge of the jungle, looking calm, his hands empty. "I accept," he said simply. Day 1. The jungle swallowed him whole. The air was hot and thick like soup. Giant insect wings buzzed in the air. The ground squished under his boots. He moved carefully, every sense alert. A long red snake slithered across a branch above him. He didn't flinch. Jace had survived worse. On Earth, he fought in abandoned war zones, survived freezing nights, and starved for days. But nothing had ever felt like this. There was something in the jungle watching him. Day 2. He found strange glowing plants. Some hissed when he touched them, others curled like fists. He stayed away. At night, something howled, something big. He didn't light a fire. He didn't sleep much either, but he kept going. Day 3. Jace climbed a tree to escape a shadow beast with 6 legs and a face like melted glass. He stayed there all night, bleeding from a claw mark on his back, but still alive. Somewhere in the branches, glowing red eyes blinked at him. They didn't attack. They just watched. Day 4. He found an ancient stone ruin in the middle of the jungle. Inside was a broken statue of a creature that looked like a human. Jace touched it. Suddenly, the mark on his chest, the glowing scar, flared with light. His muscles tensed. His body felt hot. Like power was flowing through him. The jungle hushed. Even the creature stopped making noise. It was like the jungle recognized him. Day 5. The sun rose. He was tired, dirty, and bruised, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. Stepped out of the jungle and back into the arena. The crowd gasped. He was still alive. He wasn't crawling. He wasn't crying. He was walking slow and calm, like the jungle hadn't even touched him. A silent shock spread through the crowd. Queen Valara stood from her throne, her jaw tightened, her hands curled into fists. She wasn't smiling now. Jace walked up and stood before her. "Well," he said, "do I get to speak again?" She stared into his eyes. Her heart beat faster, too fast. "Fine," she said. "You passed, but the real test is still to come." She turned and walked away, but her steps were not steady. Deep inside her chest, a strange fire had started, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't put it out. The queen's chambers were always cold. A special system pumped icy wind through silver vents in the walls to keep her giant Zelari body cool and calm. It had always worked, but now Queen Valara was burning. She paced slowly in her private chamber, dressed in a thin robe. Her armor had started to feel like fire against her skin. Her body, once proud and powerful, now felt strange, as if something inside her was changing. "Why am I hot?" she muttered. Her long claws trembled slightly. Her heartbeat was too fast. Her skin shimmered with sweat, a rare thing for a Zalari queen. She stood in front of the mirror, breathing hard, her eyes locked on her reflection. Then she saw it, a faint red glow on the side of her stomach. Small, soft, almost hidden under her skin. It pulsed, just like the strange glowing scar she had seen on the human. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. "This is not real." Outside her chamber, the palace was in chaos. The alien nobles were whispering. The jungle had never let anyone survive. But the human had walked out like it was nothing. Not even wounded. Some claimed it was fake. Some believed he was protected by ancient jungle spirits. Others said he must be cursed. But deep inside the palace, in the royal medical lab, the truth was unfolding. 3 royal healers stood around a glowing crystal scanner. The screen showed strange waves pulsing in deep red light. "It's her blood," the oldest healer said, his voice shaking. "It's reacting to something foreign, something not Zalari." "Is it poison?" another asked. "No," the old healer said. "It's mating hormones." The younger healers froze. "That's impossible. The queen's mating cycle ended 10 years ago. She's reactivating," the old healer said. "But only one DNA signal matches the reaction." He tapped the screen. A new image appeared. A human male, Jace Kellen. Valara didn't eat that day. She stayed in her chamber, sitting on the cold floor, her long legs folded beneath her. She tried to meditate, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, the human. She saw his calm eyes, his quiet strength, his voice steady, sure, never begging. No Zalari male had ever made her feel this way. Her people had always warned her. Humans are small, soft, simple. But Jace was not simple, and now her own body was turning against her. That night, she called for the priestess. An old Zalari woman with gold rings in her ears and eyes, like stone, entered the chamber. Valara knelt before her. "Tell me," the queen said, "can a Zalari mate with a human?" The priestess raised an eyebrow. "In legend, yes, once, long ago." "What happened?" The Queen of Ice took a human lover. She bore a child with red fire in his blood. A child that ended a war. Valara was silent. "Your body doesn't lie," the priestess said softly. "You've been touched by fate." "Fate?" Valara scoffed. "I don't believe in that." "Then explain your blood, your heat, your dreams." The queen looked away. "I want it to stop." The priestess smiled sadly. "It won't, not until you complete the bond." Elsewhere, Jay stood on a balcony, staring up at the queen's tower. He didn't know why, but his chest burned where his scar was. A deep warmth filled his body, like he was being called. "She's feeling it too," he whispered. He had seen her eyes change. He had seen her tremble, just once. But it was enough. And now he knew this was bigger than a challenge. It was something ancient. The queen's voice echoed in her empty chamber. "Why does my body want him?" For the first time in her life, the unbreakable queen felt something she could not fight. Desire, confusion, fear, but above all, connection. For thousands of years, the royal breeding ritual of the Zalari race had never included a human. It was not just a private act. It was a sacred ceremony, done in front of witnesses, meant to show the strength of the royal bloodline. A public test of body and soul. And now, Queen Valara had announced she would perform it, with Jace, the human. The entire palace went into shock. Nobles screamed. Soldiers whispered. The council begged her to reconsider. "He's not built for it," one shouted. "You'll break him." Another warned, "This is madness," but Queen Valara's voice was firm. "Then let him break." Jace was brought to the sanctum hall, a round chamber of stone, glowing vines hanging from the ceiling, and a giant pool of silver-blue liquid at the center. The pool shimmered like starlight. It was sacred Zalari water meant to awaken truth. He stood quietly, wearing only a thin robe. Dozens of high-ranking Zalari nobles sat in the shadows above, watching from the balconies. And then the queen entered. Valara wore a long silver wrap around her waist and nothing else. Her tall form glowed in the dim blue light. Her eyes locked onto Jace's, unreadable. "This is not about love," she said coldly. "This is about truth." Jace nodded once. "Then let's speak it without words." They stepped into the glowing pool together. The silver liquid rose up to their waists, warm, electric. Alive. It wasn't just water. It responded to energy, heartbeats, intentions. If two bodies were not compatible, the liquid would turn black and cold. The ritual would be over. The match rejected. Valara raised her hand and placed it over Jace's chest. Where the scar glowed faintly, Jace placed his hand over hers. The liquid began to pulse. All around them, the air changed. A quiet hum filled the chamber. Lights blinked. The vines above twisted and bloomed with sudden flowers, and the water began to glow. Gold. Gasps echoed from the balconies. The pool hadn't turned black. It had turned into something sacred. Valara's eyes widened. The golden glow began moving up her body, spreading into her skin like living fire. Her heart pounded. Her legs trembled. The queen of the Zalari was reacting. She tried to pull away, but her body refused. Her claws gripped Jace's shoulders, tight. He didn't fight it. He just whispered, "You're not alone anymore." And something inside her broke. Suddenly, memories began flashing through. Her mind, not hers. A boy running on a battlefield. A mother dying in his arms. Cold nights under alien stars. Fighting alone. Surviving again and again. She was seeing his past. The sacred pool had connected their minds, and now he was seeing hers. A lonely throne. Endless war. No softness. No choice. Only duty. Only silence. Only pain. The water pulsed one last time, then stilled. Queen Valara's body collapsed against him, breathless. Her head rested on his chest, her long black hair flowing into the glowing pool. Jace held her gently, his heart steady. "It's done," she whispered. "The bond is real." She looked up at him, her lips parted. "I didn't think it could feel like this." Above them, the nobles sat in stunned silence. The priests bowed their heads. For the first time in history, a human had completed the royal breeding ritual and lived. Later, in her private chamber, Valara sat alone. The glow in her skin had faded, but the fire inside her had not. She touched her stomach. And for the first time in her life, she smiled, but in the shadows, her enemies were already plotting. Because if the queen was falling for a human. Then the entire galaxy was about to change. Queen Valara stood before the royal mirror, taller than any warrior, stronger than any noble, but right now, she looked lost. Her eyes, once sharp like blades, were now soft. Her hand rested gently over her stomach, right where that strange warmth had started. A quiet pulse. A throb she couldn't stop. No scars, no bruises, but she was wounded. "Why does my body want him?" she whispered. She hated weakness. She had never needed comfort, warmth, or connection. Her life had been all war, duty, and isolation. Her body had always been hers, cold, controlled, perfect. But now she dreamed of him. In her dreams, Jace didn't speak. He simply stood there, looking at her like she wasn't a ruler but a woman. She dreamed of his touch, not hard, not rough, just present, steady, honest, warm in a way no Zalari male had ever been, and each morning she woke up burning. The palace staff began to notice. The queen no longer snapped at servants. Her voice had softened. Her steps had slowed. She stared at the stars for long minutes. She skipped war meetings. She no longer trained. Some whispered that she was ill. Others feared she was cursed by the jungle. Only the royal healer knew the truth, and he dared not speak it, because the queen wasn't sick. She was changing. Jace, meanwhile, was kept under guard in a golden guest tower. Not as a prisoner, but not truly free either. He stood at the balcony each night, watching the twin moons rise. He felt the mark on his chest glow softly. She's fighting it, he muttered. He didn't want to conquer her. He didn't want her to fall for him because of rituals or instincts. He wanted her to choose him. With her mind, with her heart. On the 5th night, the queen finally came, not with guards, not in armor, just in a simple robe. Jace turned when he heard the soft click of the door. She entered slowly. No crown, no guards, just herself. I don't understand this, she said. He waited. I've been trained to destroy weakness. I ruled without love. And now all I can think about is you. Jace stepped closer. I never wanted to break you, he said quietly. I just wanted to show you you don't have to stand alone. She laughed just once, a small, bitter sound. No one stands beside a storm. Then maybe, he said, the storm needs to rest. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Valara did something no one in the galaxy had ever seen. She leaned into him, not as a queen, but as a woman who was tired of fighting alone. The next morning, the sky turned red, not from sunrise but from the enemy fleet arriving in orbit. Dozens of warships, flags of rebellion. The exiled General Zother had returned, and he had chosen now to strike. Queen Valara has fallen. His broadcast boomed across the stars. She has bonded with a human. She is unfit to rule. Zalari must rise again. The queen stood before her war council, stronger than ever, but her hand still moved. Briefly, to her stomach, where the fire now burned gently, and deep inside her heart, where only she could feel it. Something had already begun to grow. The war. Horns echoed through the sky. Red banners from the rebel fleet darkened the sun as they entered orbit. Every screen on the palace walls showed the same face, General Zother, the exiled warlord, eyes filled with rage. Queen Valara has bonded with a human. She carries impure blood. She cannot lead us. The city trembled. Inside the palace, the queen stood tall, unmoved before her war council. But those closest to her noticed it. Her breath was shallow. Her hands trembled. Her eyes burned, not with anger, but pain. She was trying to hide it, and failing. Jace was locked in the observatory when it happened. A soldier ran in, breathless. The queen, she's down. She's collapsed. Jace didn't wait. He ran through the stone halls, past guards who shouted his name, past nobles who backed away in fear. He reached the throne room and found her, Queen Valara, on the ground, surrounded by her stunned council. Her skin was pale, her eyes unfocused, a glowing red mark pulsed on her stomach. Her body is rejecting itself, a healer cried. Her blood is fighting the bond. Another healer shook his head. No, she's changing, too fast. The pregnancy, the human DNA, her body wasn't prepared. Jace dropped to his knees beside her and grabbed her hand. Valara, look at me, I'm here. At first, she didn't respond, but then her eyes fluttered open. Jace. It hurts, she whispered. I'm not strong enough for this. He held her hand tighter. Yes, you are. But you don't have to fight it alone. Suddenly, the red glow on her stomach spread up her chest, down her arms. She cried out in pain. Her claws dug into the floor. Healers backed away in panic. Get him away from her. One shouted, but the priestess stepped forward, eyes wide. No, He is the only one who can stabilize her. The healers froze. Jace didn't ask questions. He reached into his shirt and pulled down the collar, revealing the strange, glowing scar on his chest. The same color, the same pulse. He placed his scar against hers, and the world stopped. Shockwave of light burst from their bodies, white and red swirling together like fire and ice. The floor cracked. The torches blew out. Time seemed to freeze. In that moment, Queen Valara saw everything. She saw herself not as a queen, but as a woman with a future. She saw the child forming inside her. She saw Jace standing beside her, not as a mate of weakness, but of balance. And her heart whispered something she had never said before. I want to live, not for war, but for us. The light faded. The room was quiet. Valara lay still, then gasped. Her body calmed. Her skin stopped glowing. Her eyes opened fully. She was alive. And for the first time truly herself. Jace smiled. Softly, told you I wasn't that easy to break. She touched his face. You didn't save a queen today, she said. You saved a mother. But as they held each other, the palace trembled. Enemy ships were descending fast. Zothar's army was already landing on the lower levels of the city. War was coming, and the queen, newly healed, newly changed, stood tall once more. This time, not alone. The war had already started. Explosions shook the royal city. Fires burned in the sky. Enemy dropships rained down like metal hail. The rebels were screaming one word over and over. Traitor! Inside the palace walls, Queen Valara stood at the head of her army, taller than all, her black hair tied high, her body wrapped in golden armor. But her hand rested over her stomach. There, beneath the plates of metal, life moved, and it changed everything. Jace stood beside her, not as a soldier, not as a servant, but as her equal. Alien generals and nobles stood behind them, uncertain. She carries a human child, someone whispered. She's tainted, another spat. She can't lead. The queen raised her hand. Silenced. Her voice was calm, but it struck like thunder. For years you followed me because I was strong. I won wars. I killed your enemies. But strength without purpose is hollow. She stepped forward, eyes burning. I chose the human because he showed me something none of you ever did: mercy, peace. And now, I carry a child that may be the only hope this empire has. If you fear that, then you are already broken. The crowd stood frozen. Then one old warlord stepped forward. He knelt. Then another, and another. Above the palace, General Zothar's main ship hovered low, its weapons charging. Prepare the strike, he barked. Wipe out the palace. End this weakness. But just as his ship locked onto the throne tower, something rose from the jungle below. A giant serpent beast, silver-scaled and glowing red, slithered up the side of the mountain, roaring into the sky. It was the jungle guardian. The same one that had watched Jace in silence. The beast coiled around the enemy ship and crushed it midair, ripping metal like paper. The rebels screamed in panic. Back at the palace, Queen Valara whispered, even the jungle has chosen. The battle ended by dusk. Zothar's forces fell back, defeated by soldiers who now fought not just for a crown, but for a new future, for a queen who was no longer alone. Days later, the galaxy watched a new broadcast. The queen stood proudly on the throne platform, one hand in Jace's, the other resting gently on her belly. I carry the first child born of two worlds, she announced. Not pure Zalari, not pure human, but something greater. For too long we ruled with fear. It's time we lead with unity. She paused. And love. The crowd roared. Across star systems, beings of every race watched in awe. And for the first time, they believed peace might be real. Later, when the cameras were off and the chambers were quiet, Valara sat with Jace on the balcony. Her head rested on his shoulder. Her strength had not faded. But now, It was wrapped in something new, hope. "You ruined everything," she whispered playfully. "And built something better," he replied. She smiled. "Then stay with me. Raise this child by my side. Not as my pet, not even as my consort, but as my mate." Jace looked at her, this towering, powerful woman, and nodded once. Always, and somewhere deep within the stars, a heartbeat echoed. Half human, half XEL, ARI. And fully the future.